All right. Thank you, Chris, for joining us for Cyberpunk Day. Chris is a photographer who goes by the moniker Longfire,
Yep.
and you can find him on Instagram at Longfire. And I'm just going to scroll through some of your photos to start out, Chris, to give everyone some context, and then
Awesome. Awesome.
we'll jump into some questions. But really excited to have you to interview today. I think we've been friends on Instagram for a couple of years now, so it's
Yeah.
pretty cool
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able
Thanks for having
to
me.
touch base kind of more in person. And so, yeah, I'm kind of just giving everyone a little bit of a sample of your photography.
Cool.
Lots of amazing shots, also lots of different locations as far as I can tell, like geographically speaking. So, really interested.
Yeah, I've been bouncing around a little bit now. It used to be mostly in just Philly area, which that's where I'm from, but started to expand out a little bit to like New York, LA. I went to Toronto. Um, so it's like a lot of different locations now. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks, I mean, fun excuse to kind of combo trips into something creative as well.
Yeah.
Um, so on your page, you use the word cyberpunk, neon-noir, as well as a few others to describe your work. But I'm interested to hear how you would describe your photography.
I, it's funny, like I'm so used to this aesthetic because I've pretty much stuck with one style that like when I call it like cyberpunk or neon noir, it just kind of comes natural to me. But really, it's like an urban landscape street photography project. I've been a fan of cyberpunk and science fiction my whole life, so it's such a feels like to me it's such a normal thing to just go out and shoot in this aesthetic, and yet it's so different than a lot of different photography that's out there. um, I also have a background in comic books, so I'm always constantly around uh, creative environment and different things that kind of inspire me. So when I go to shoot this style of photography, it's just I don't know, it just comes like second nature to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. And you mentioned the style being pretty unique. Like I've seen a lot of sort of urban landscape um, photography, and what I've seen of that tends to kind of go in just sort of a more general direction of like, hey, look at this big beautiful city, and then other stuff tends to go in more of a like dystopian sort of dark shots. And yours has this really cool combo of being really bright and intriguing colors, but also in this nightscape element that does kind of bring in that noir and a little bit of a darker undertone to it, which is to me a big element of cyberpunk, is that combination of sort of bright and glitzy and cool technology, but often in a very dark setting, or a setting where there's a lot of sort of dark undertones going on.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so what about this style speaks to you? You touched on, comics, and so I'm kind of interested how you came to start doing this.
I it kind of goes back to the early 2000s where I was studying to be an illustrator in college, and one of the requirements that we were to pick up the camera and shoot reference. So I had my very first experience with being out in the doing kind of street photography, but at that time it was more catered towards doing artwork. I wasn't necessarily concerned with a full-on composition of a photograph because that wasn't going to be my finished piece. And then over the years, I just kind of on more on a whim, kind of just went out. I think it was a couple months actually before Blade Runner 2049, and I just went out in the street and I started something kind of just clicked where I just started to see something, whether it was like modern architecture with like the old architecture, the lighting, just it was raining, different things like that, a lot of the reflections. And I just noticed this really cool parallel to things that we see in a lot of like movies, TV, games, stuff like that. And to be able to just shoot it and then go home and edit it up in Lightroom and give it that kind of similar mood and atmosphere was, that I think that whole kind of thing just is what really like struck me about this. And since then I kind of just kept running with it and kept going, and trying to find things that that I'd either see in movies or things that would really just connect with me. I would just try to see if I could find that connection out in the street level.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds a little bit like you're sort of taking these fictional worlds and trying to bring them to life and environments around you. Is that
Yeah, yeah, it's
kind of what you
just
said?
going out and doing a little world building, just having kind of just it's funny because it's like you're just going out and having fun with the real world stuff you see on like every day. On a normal day, you just kind of walk by things and don't even think about it. But when you kind of like stop and with a camera and you're setting up compositions and all that kind of stuff, you kind of start to see how things are like when they do like Blade Runner or different types of movies. Just creating that kind of world.
So yeah, we touched a little bit on your shooting locations then, because you mentioned it started out with kind of areas around Philly and what was familiar to you there, and that you've been expanding out. Heard you mention Toronto. I certainly some of your photos. It looks like Japan or other East Asian areas. So how are you finding your shooting locations?
I pretty much just like for instance in Philly, I would just wander around and explore, just look around, look at different environments, go to different sections of the city. Um, like for instance, I would go to Chinatown would be my main location, because it's a lot easier to capture a lot of those elements that you find in the cyberpunk genre, and there's a lot of lights and stuff like that, and a lot of movement, people walking around. There's some interesting landmarks, and it kind of just spun out from there. Like I would just go to different spots. For instance, if I was going to a different city where I'm not so familiar with, like when I went out to LA, I wasn't, other than what I've seen in movies and stuff, I wasn't really sure. And so I would just do a little research ahead of time. There's obviously you follow people online. I would even do things like go into like Google Street View and just drive around and just be like, oh, that looks cool, or stuff like that, and just reach out to other people with just things that they've seen or they've shot, and just kind of go from there.
So
Maybe
do
even
you have
find locations that I've seen in movies and kind of just to go to that spot, and just see kind of what they did, and see what else I can pull from it. Is there something I can do different, or maybe there's something in our surrounding area that would be pretty cool to shoot.
that's an interesting idea. It's sort of building on, yeah, scenes you've seen in movies or trying a different interpretation of that location. Do you have like a network of photographers or filmmakers that you are in contact with who kind of give you tips on other
Yeah,
places?
I mean, I have a couple photography friends that regularly go out with me in the city. We all kind of just wander around and shoot and bounce ideas, talk shop. Um, and if anything, it's good, having a couple people out with you in the city at night, because you never know what you're
Yeah.
going to run into out there. So sometimes it feels a little bit more cyberpunk than it should.
Well, that was going to be a question of mine. Wandering urban environments, yeah, you can, I guess, stumble into a situation that you didn't want to be in, and here you are carrying what I presume is fairly expensive camera equipment. Do you ever get hassled while you're out?
Um, I mean, it's starting to get a little rougher these days, but I really haven't had too many like crazy things. I've seen some things happen, but like I mean, most of the time it's people just coming up asking for money, or if anything, it's people like, "Hey, you shooting a music video?" I'm like, "No, I'm just a guy here with a point and shoot kind of type camera. Like what? There's no production going on here." But like it'll be like stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely the atmosphere in the city these days is a little bit rougher than normal. But I'm going out tonight, so it's not stopping me from doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Do you find people are sort of intrigued or curious about what you're up to while you're shooting?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People will ask sometimes, and then I think, and they're like, "Oh, do you have an Instagram page?" And I think, they're expecting like just just kind of normal city photography or something, or a bunch of selfie. I don't know what they're expecting. And then like when they see that it's like this kind of like aesthetic, they're like, well, that's kind of cool. So yeah. So sometimes, yeah, I'll get people to that'll stop and ask.
So yeah, as you're out wandering around, I presume there's a little more of an effort level to bringing a camera body and different lenses that you might use. And every year cell phone cameras are getting better. So do you feel like there's really a place for film and DSLR, or that in the world of photography that the capability of a cell phone is starting to take that over?
I mean, I think there's always going to be a place for you know mirrorless DSLR film cameras. I think they all have their unique advantages. I personally shoot with a Sony mirrorless, and I just like being able to hold the camera and being able to change the lenses. There's something very natural about that. I like. I haven't shot with a film camera in several years, but I still like the way it. There's something about the picture of it. It's something feels very alive, and I don't know whether it's the vintage look or the soft look that it has, or even like it's hard to describe, but it's just something about the photo itself feels a little bit different than the super tack sharp, high end mirrorless camera type stuff. But at the same time, the cell phones advancing, it's great too, because then you can, you don't have to carry around all this crazy equipment. If you could just take a picture on the fly, kind of.
Hmm.
So and you can do it a little bit more like discreetly, and it's not like you have this whole thing where you're kind of like weirdly posed on the side of the street trying to, you know, you're not drawing so much attention, but like there's such a convenience to it, and now that they're advancing so much, that's great. But there's to me there's something like kind of personal, and maybe it's just you know just used to being able to hold a camera and compose a shot, and that's something that just kind of comes normal to me to use, where I still feel kind of awkward with a cell phone. I don't know whether it's just because it's just kind of that candy bar shaped, where it's not, to me it's a phone and not really necessarily a camera.
Right,
um
right. It's a tool. It's not meant for
right.
or one purpose the way a
Yeah.
camera is. Hmm. It's pretty interesting. So, with a lot of your shots, I mean, it looks like, pretty dark environments. Are you having to set up a tripod and do long exposures?
Yeah, it depends what I'm trying to do. A lot of times I don't use the tripod for my walk around kind of shoots. I kind of will shoot handheld. If you see anything that's got like any like light trails, or like um eh, things that have like where the lights almost like these looks like little like bursts and stuff like that, you can kind of see that it'll be set for a long exposure.
Mm,
Some of
I see. Maybe that one
the
there.
LA shots are long exposure because they'll be on like overpasses and things like that, and I'm trying to get all the lights from the cars passing through.
Oh, very cool. Um, so yeah, one thing I think would be interested to everyone. I've always had sort of a passing interest in photography, but never really, you know, committed the time to it or knew exactly where to start in terms of taking that next step beyond just, having a cell phone in my pocket and snapping shots of things that look cool, but really knowing how to set up the shot, the composition, the lighting, and then to do the editing to get all of the color right and the saturation levels right. So, what advice do you have for someone who might be interested in getting into photography in general, and especially this kind of urban nightscape style?
Yeah, I mean, really the best advice is just go out there and do it, and you know go out there and then just look around, look at the buildings and the way people move through, look for cool lighting, go to a landmark, even go to locations that you might see pictures of more frequently. Like there's a certain thing with like it's a cliche for a reason, like go there and like there's nothing wrong with going to a landmark, because a lot of times when you look at science fiction films, they always have some key point or key location, and then just just stand there for a while and, observe the environment, kind of immerse yourself into a little bit, see if you can connect any dots. I'll throw on my headphones, see if I can connect to some sort of music or something like that, or song, or kind of get me in that mode. Um, and then just start snapping pictures. I mean, it'll take time. The more you take, the more you bring back with you, and the more you can kind of look over. And a lot of times I'll go out and I'll take a ton of pictures, and I'll come back, and they might all be in some way kind of, nice and cool, but maybe they don't hit exactly what I was looking for. But I might see things and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, maybe if I went over there across the street or whatever. So I'll go back and visit a location. I'll go back and visit in the rain and or different weather conditions, and just see if I can get something else or a different take. Or and usually that's when you end up getting your best stuff, is going out there in various weather conditions. But really, it's just going out there and shooting, and having fun with it.
That's really interesting to hear. So coming from the perspective of a writer, for me, I feel like the revision process is where things really come alive. And it, what I hear you talk about is very similar, right? You go to a location, you try a shot, you have an idea, and then you look at that and you go, okay, it's not quite what I was hoping for. And so you go back and you try again, and there's this
Yep.
revision element to the work, and that's really cool. I think that's something I didn't immediately think about with photography, is that you have that same element of iteration to really get to the final result that you see on your page.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the shots that I have will have almost like there's a couple different takes of each. And it's funny, like even just being like, say you have the shot, and even if you just like step over slightly, even if it's just so slightly, you get an entirely different shot. And it's almost just because, like, the angle's off center or something like that. But it's just like when you get it back on the computer and you blow it up on the screen, and you're just like, oh man, if I just went this way, this would get the shot that I was looking for. And then, hey, just sometimes just go back out there and do it, and you'll probably end up with something a lot better. And you'll be more happy with it too when you post it on Instagram.
Yeah. So like a minute or two back, I heard you mention that sometimes you use music to sort of get into the right mindset for the shot. And I know on some of your Instagram posts, you'll mention a title of a song. Is that the song that you were listening to when the shot really came together?
Sometimes, a lot of times it'll be in the editing process, because that's when I'm adding the tones and the kind of feel of it. So like I might be when I'm out in the street, I might be listening to a little bit more like heavier music, things with like more beats to kind of get the adrenaline going. It'll be more like older industrial stuff. And then, but when I get home and start editing adding in like some of the blue tones and purples, that's when you're going to have more of the synth wave kind of music going, and kind of just really trying to, in a weird way, trying to feel what this picture or what this is going to be. And then a lot of times that's what'll end up being what is the song that I'll connect to it on Instagram. I mean, it could be even just the sound, it could be the lyrics, could be anything.
Okay. Yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting. So we're almost out of time, and I wanted to make sure we reserved a little bit of time for you to kind of give a shout out of where people can go to find your work and especially buy your work. And one thing I did want to say is I think a year or two ago, I bought a print of yours,
You did.
and
Thank you.
it's hanging up in my office. I
Awesome.
love it. So for anyone out there interested in purchasing some prints, I can attest very high quality. And you included a lot of fun extras in the box too. Like there were some stickers in there. I think there was a
Yes.
neck
Yeah.
gator. And so yeah, why don't you kind of let everyone know the best way to find your work and purchase your work. And
Yeah, you can reach me at instagram.com/longfire. My website is www.longfire.net. I've got a link in there. You can go to my print site. Um, I'm also on Twitter, twitter.com/ I think that's xlongfire. I had to switch that for some reason. And then I'm also on Vero. I use Vero a lot. So vero.co/longfire.
okay. Great. Well, yeah, and I think we can like drop some links in the chat to help people find those places.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think with that, we'll wrap it up. So I, again, just want to say thank you. It was really cool to, kind of make contact in person finally and learn more
yeah,
about the process behind your shots. So we
yeah.
appreciate
Thank
you
you.
making the time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.